obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Our Parking Industry Podcast. I'm Krista Olien, and I'm here with Clyde Wilson and Leigh Thomas. Today, we have our roundtable episode following up on the episode with Graham Haldeman when he was our guest. He is the CEO and general manager at Hub, and we had a great conversation that explored everything from customer service to AI to upcoming global technology trends. We just covered all the bases plus some. We had lots of talk about data and lots of talk about technology, and he is in the middle of a company that is probably experiencing one of the biggest transitions that the parking industry is undergoing. He is a part of Hub, which is historically a parks hardware vendor, and they are getting hit the hardest with this technology change. So a lot of the parks vendors, if they were traditionally hardware, they're having to make this big swing over to be software companies to stay competitive, to stay relevant. And so we know that that has been a challenge for everyone in the industry and everyone in that niche of hardware. So, Leigh, what was your biggest takeaway from the episode with Graham?
I felt like he kept mentioning principles that, first of all, we've heard lots of times on this podcast. He talked a lot about simplicity. He talked about collaboration and customer experience. And I wonder if these are the things in the industry that are not changing. But these are also the things in the industry that are going to make the technology successful. So one thing that I noticed specifically is he talked a lot about how the parking industry is tempted to be complex. It's being tempted to make things fancy and so technology savvy that it's complicated. And so I felt like Graham said over and over and over again that our goal actually needs to be simplicity. Operators are being asked to manage more than they've ever had to manage before. And every new technology promises convenience. But sometimes these new components introduce complexity because they're not talking to each other.
Yeah, he talked a lot about how vendors across operations and technology and all parts of the parking industry need to get together and have conversations and really get those streamlined customer journey experiences out to the public and play nice in the sandbox together, if you will. Clyde, what was your biggest takeaway?
Well, I think I'll start with, as he began his discussion with you guys, we found out he started in the valet business.
By accident.
Yeah, common theme.
I think we're finding a common theme here. So I thought, as soon as he said that, I thought, okay, well, that helps me a lot with where we're going with this, because I've got an equipment vendor here that I've known many of these guys for 45 years, and I know what their real background is. And all of a sudden, we have one that came up through valet. So I know he knows operations, and I know he knows customer service better than most of the people that are directly from the equipment side. So I knew it was going to be interesting, and I thought it was. I think in some respects what he was trying to say, and we certainly see this, everybody in the parking industry now thinks they have to only have a conversation about how great they are in technology and AI and all of this stuff, and they forget what we're really here to do. Those things are helpers to be able to solve the customer service problems, to get our customers in and out. So he seemed to really pick up on that very quickly, that everybody thinks they're in this business over here now. And we certainly hear it in the presentations of AI first and AI everything, and everything we're doing is AI this and AI that. And they all have to, if you read the web pages now of groups that are out there, they're all seem to be focused on conversations about technology, when we're absolutely in the technology world now. But that's not what our business is. And we have a couple of companies out there that are really trying to move away from the parking industry into a technology play. So he had an interesting perspective. I haven't met him before, but it's good to see Hub, a very important player in our industry, have someone at the helm here in the U.S. that has the perspective that he does.
Absolutely. Bringing that operations mindset into technology is rare. And so I really appreciated that too. Another thing that he mentioned that we feel to our core is that there's this push for data, and AI helping with data and having all these numbers. But who's interpreting that information? That is one of the most important questions that we at TPN are asking the industry. We can have all these numbers, we can have all these fancy reports that we can run, we can have these dashboards, but who is interpreting that information on behalf of the operators in some cases and the asset owners who are paying for this operation to be functioning and the P&Ls that they receive? Who's interpreting what's actually happening in the numbers? And I think AI can do some, right? AI can only do so much, but it's the core of understanding that every operation is unique. Every operation has its own little things that make it different. And so you can't assign an AI interpreter to every operation because it'll only look at things through a specific lens. There's no way to incorporate what the experience is of driving into the garage and how hard the entry is to find and how to overcome that challenge so that revenue can go up and those real life experiences on that customer journey. So I appreciated that introspective kind of analysis too, that AI is helper. It's a tool, right? It can help us interpret the data, but how do we actually get it into a realistic, useful form that operators and asset owners can both benefit from and use the foundational information to make those decisions that will help impact the garage overall or the parking facility overall, especially regarding that customer journey. So I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that concept, but that was one of my biggest takeaways from the episode was how AI can be a helper, but it still requires the personal touch to be able to get that data into a usable form that applies to the specific location and its operation.
And regardless of a manager's relationship with AI, an important part of being a manager is valuing your boots on the ground people, taking care and getting training to the ones who are walking the facility. I felt like Graham did a great job of reminding us that that's a part of the leadership expectations with or without AI.
Krista said probably the most important part of this, where she said useful. When she said useful, it hit me because data. There's all these numbers out there, and we are in an industry that is moving toward this overflowing amount of information that you try to look for to manage this. Now, I've got to be careful here because I don't want to give away our secret with our PACS program, but there's a very unique piece of PACS that really solves that problem. It's what PACS is all about, solving that problem. Because you can have all the data, but if you don't understand how to use it, the useful part, then it doesn't matter how many piles of numbers you have. You have great piles of numbers, and you can talk about specific little pieces of that pile of numbers, but an operation is an operation. And it's interesting to see that problem. We see it all the time, and it's interesting now to see how other people in the industry see that challenge also.
Yeah. So we do a lot in parking. If you're new to our podcast, if this is the first episode you've listened to, just a quick disclaimer is we just answer parking problems. People call us with small questions, like little one-off 30-second conversations. And then we also step in and do major audits. So from our experience, Clyde and Krista, let's talk about this data for a minute. Like, what data is useful to look at? And again, we're not going to give away any of our secrets. And then also, like, what data do we see managers get hung up on that's actually not so useful? Could we talk about data for a minute?
Sure. So let me give you a little bit this data thing has been around for a little while now. We, when we were doing flow through, had a booth in 2016, maybe. And our signs all over our big booth was data, 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 all over that booth. Because, this was new to us. Nobody else was really doing it, but they were all talking about it. And we were pushing on the inside of how do we figure this out and what's important. Now, we did figure that out, but this isn't new. That was 2016. It's been around for a while, and the industry still hasn't solved the problem.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest pieces is that people look at the big numbers and the big, revenue, P&L numbers, but they don't dig into what those numbers are derived from. So what's the core of how those numbers even exist, right? And we go in and we look at things transaction by transaction. And the numbers, like Clyde always says, we're good stewards of his wisdom, but the numbers always tell a story. They always tell a story. And if you are just looking at the ending, you don't know how the story developed, what played into how it ended. You don't know any of those details, so you can't make changes to the facility in the big numbers without making changes to the small numbers in the story, to the small details, to the different plots that are going on, right? So in each garage, there's different parking groups. There's different groups of parkers, and you have to know the habits and the preferences of those different groups of parkers. Now, like we've said before, that is not a one size fits all for every location. It depends on what's around. What does the market look like? What are the trends in the market? We have locations that we're looking at right now that they have kind of surprised me because it is a place that I would like to go in the summer because I'm from Texas, right? And it's hot, it's 100 degrees. But if I went up north, I would probably go and choose this place for a vacation. However, these locations, the summer is their slow time. And so that's kind of counterintuitive to my thought process. But it's in the numbers. So you cannot discount those details. You have to pay attention to the details because that's what you can change that will ultimately impact the big numbers. So going back to your question, Leigh, I think operators and asset owners, they want lower expenses, higher revenue. Like that's the goal across the board. If you ask somebody, lower expenses, higher revenue. But how do you do that? How do you get to that point? How do you make that a realization of the location? It's in the details. So I think that's my answer to that question.
I'm not sure if this story is relevant or not, but this week, and it just finished yesterday, was one of the big weeks in the aviation world. And it was interesting. It hit me in the middle of this thing. What I was really seeing, and I've been involved in this for I don't know how many years, but it's Oshkosh, the air show in Oshkosh, which is the largest air show in the world of general aviation aircraft. So you have everything there. You have military aircraft coming in, you have old military aircraft coming in to show, and then you have a gazillion day-to-day pilots of all kinds of skills. And the first time I flew an airplane into there, it was interesting because not everybody around you is a really good pilot, but you're about to fly into one airport with 30,000 airplanes coming at you. And so the interesting story is the aviation world has been going through the same technology change. And I won't go into the explanation of it, but the console of an airplane today looks significantly different than it did just 10 years ago because of the technology we have in there. And then we have this other little thing called ADS-B. And in ADS-B, I bought the very first one I had at this air show probably 15 years ago. And today, it's mandatory that you have ADS-B in and out. So with that, I have a map in the airplane, and I can see every airplane in the world on my map. Around me, I can see where they are, how fast they're going, what altitude they are they pointing at me? I can see all of that stuff. So Oshkosh gets these 30,000 airplanes in and out the same way they have for the last 50 years, I guess. You get There's a published thing that you can get online before you go. And it's about 30 pages, and you're one pilot in an airplane trying to go through all this stuff, but you kind of have it memorized. And you're supposed to, as you get close, none of the other airports around Oshkosh will talk to you because it's too busy for them. They don't have the staffing for that. So you fly in and you fly to a point, and when you fly to that point, there's a guy down on the ground with binoculars looking up and says, "Green Mooney, over Fisk approach, wag your wings." And you're supposed to rock your wings. And he says, "Good rock, I've got you." You don't talk to him, and that's it. He then says, "Here's your approach," and you fly the approach. The technology's gone. There is nothing about that flying into the busiest airport in the world at that moment in time, other than some guy down on the ground with binoculars looking and telling you, "Wag your wings, please." Oh, that was a really good wag.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, listeners, you missed my wing rock.
I remember the first time a controller told me that, and I was so happy. I wagged my wings really good. Then I realized you told everybody. But I had to tell the story because it's this piece that goes with all of this technology behind the scenes. But the way we really get 40,000 airplanes in is the old technology that's been there for 50 years. And I was thinking about it this time, wondering, when are they going to change? It's coming. But right now, I don't know. But you can take the most advanced technology. I mean, the reason for telling the story, you can take the most advanced technology and then still put a ticket spitter out there, and somebody drives in, pulls a ticket, and pays a machine. You know, you don't have to have every single customer forced into the most advanced technology piece. And we managed to get 40,000 airplanes in and out without any of them running into each other.
And everybody's wagging their wings.
But that's a beautiful image of what we're calling the industry to do. Is, yes, you are flooded with data. Yes, you are flooded maybe with, what's that thing about like buyer's fatigue? Like, you have so many choices of what technology to implement in your facility that it's just exhausting. But that's not the main conversation. The main conversation is the 3 parking rules that Clyde has been teaching us for decades. Is you need to bring cars in, charge money for a space, collect that money, get the money in the bank, and get the people out the door. It's simple. Keep it simple.
Right. And there they had to get us lined up. That's all they had to do. Get everybody lined up and pointed at a runway. And they did that without going in through all of the technology. And it was, it's interesting. So it kind of all applies.
Absolutely. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I love that story and that representation of technology and how it can be beneficial, right? But then we also need to have a solid foundation. Graham talked a lot about conventions and going and seeing and talking with people in person. And he talked a lot about NPA and IPMI and the transitions that some of them have made, some of those smaller local shows that are nationwide, but they're just smaller shows that have a really focused group that they talk to. And I wanted to ask this question to Clyde. So we know that the industry, kind of like buyer's fatigue that Leigh was touching on, we know that the industry has made this slow change to having, instead of just genuine parking people, it's become an industry that's riddled with salespeople, and how that has impacted what it means to go to a convention and have genuine conversations with people that can really impact change. So I know this is kind of a hard question and a different type of question than we talk about, but how can we go to a convention or go to a show and make those connections where we can actually have an impact on the direction that the industry is going? And has the history or the convenience of those conversations changed because now maybe we're only talking to someone that's trying to tell us how great their product is instead of having those deeper conversations? So Clyde, what have you seen as far as the conversations that are being had at conventions and shows? Has it changed?
Well, it's changed because it's of the move from hardware to software. It's changed. But I tell you what, I can remember, I think I can still remember my very first time standing on the exhibit floor, looking around at the exhibitors going, I don't think any of those guys over there were here last year. And I'm not sure that any of those guys were here last year. Now, Amano was here, Federal was here, Ski Data was here, but I don't think those guys were here. So what we're experiencing is hardware is difficult and expensive. You've got to make it. And believe me, with flow through, I had to make it from scratch to do what it was supposed to do. I know how expensive it is and hard it is. The technology stuff, there are tech people out there now graduating from college all over the world for the last 15 years, walking into something that's going to be tech related. And the professors are telling them every industry out there, everything they're doing is screwed up. And you have the key to technology to solve it. So they don't go learn the business. They walk right over there and start putting together technology to count cars.
And I have a story about that real quick. Clyde knows this as a fact because just in my time, I've been here since 2018, and just in my time, we have had at least 4 different groups contact Clyde that are university students. They're working on a technology that's going to solve all the parking problems that are out in the industry. While a noble concept and a noble initiative, it's been really interesting to kind of hear they want to learn from Clyde's knowledge and wisdom, right? That's why they've gotten his name and contacted him and reached out and done all these things. But they have this ulterior motive to fulfill this thing that they're being asked to do. And you can't learn the parking industry in 3 conversations with someone. You can't. It's impossible. And so just wanted to throw that out there that Clyde is telling a story or telling a concept that actually happens. And I'm sure there's other people out in the industry that have been contacted the same way. And their name has been given to this school, and they've ended up on a list of these great parking professionals that people need to know if that's the path that they are choosing for their study. So I just wanted to put that story in there because it's true and it's real and
very very, very applicable. What we're seeing is we forget, and I think it's happening more and more with the younger people today. We forget who we are. We're the largest market of anything. So if you're a tech kid in India, Asia, wherever, and you have a product that you convince an investor can be marketed in the US, well, they'll throw money at you. So now you've got to go do that. You didn't take the time to learn the business. You can just make a gate go up and down. Or today, that's not even the case anymore. You can account for a car driving by. And that's what you're selling. You really don't understand the bigger impact. And we are trying to handle the bigger impact. So we have all of these salesmen out there selling stuff because they got an investor. Every one of them got an investor. The investor may have been a little bit or a lot, mostly a little bit, enough to keep them alive for the next year, go into conventions and buy seats at conventions and stuff. But they have no choice. They may be a tech guy, but they better start coming out of there with sales pretty soon. So the pressure's on. They got to sell something that they don't know works. And I'm going to give you a good example, and I will do everything I can to not say the name. There is a group right now of that technology group that all of a sudden is big. They have parking operators that are using their new technology because the parking operators are dying to be able to think they're in technology. Well, my experience with them goes back to 2018, and they came into the US with a BS story that sounded BS to me, but I couldn't prove it. So I called some people in Europe to see if they could prove it. And they called me back and said, we got them. You want us to have them arrested and put in jail? They didn't have any of the things that they were telling people they had, anything. And they kind of then, we dumped them. They kind of then went away for a little while and came back with simply just a better story. And now they're here and people have bought their crap and they're everywhere. So that's happening. I'm sure it's not just in the parking industry. I'm sure it's in a lot of industries, but we forget what a big market we are. And so if we buy something, somebody just became really important out there in the tech world because they started selling it in the US. And the lies they tell us to make us believe they were selling it all over Europe, they get away with it. And that's what this group was doing. And we're not good investigators. These people told us how great they were and how much business they had. Well, there was just one little piece in their story that I happen to know the people involved a little tiny bit enough to go, I don't really think that's true, but it's Europe. How do I prove this? So then I thought about the person that I ultimately called, and we got a better understanding of it. But I think that was one. How many examples of that are really out there? We have people buying stuff that doesn't work. So you start getting owners, property managers getting reluctant of what do I buy? What does work? And it's a exciting time to be in the business. This was not problems I was trying to solve 25 years ago. Guarantee you.
So what are some practical tips for someone that is going to a convention or a show and they want to make those genuine connections to meet people and talk to people that can actually influence the industry and get us kind of redirected in the right direction? We've done episodes about hidden fees. We've done episodes about smoke and mirrors with AI. We've done episodes about fake it till you make it with the technology people and the stories that Clyde just told. How do we avoid those types of things and make those genuine connections? I think one of my takeaways from meeting Graham and talking with Graham, we were at a small convention, the WLF for NPA. It was small, it was intimate. And so it was easy to, sit down and talk with somebody or go to the little glow golf that they hosted, and you get partnered up with people that you might have never talked to, and you end up talking with them as you're going through these things. At the larger conventions and in the expo halls, I don't know that those connections necessarily happen. So how do we encourage people or give practical tips to help ourselves and other people make those connections when they're spending the money to go to those and be at those conventions surrounded by salespeople?
I'll give you one easy answer. What's your phone number?
That is practical. Call somebody. Oh, call us. Yes.
Call us.
That is practical.
Yes. I think it's until you know the answer to these things, I think you have to stay around people that you know. The bigger equipment manufacturers 15 years ago were not really getting involved with all the flow of technology that was coming in. But today they are. So I would rather go to somebody that we know than to try to pick my way through the flood of technology.
Okay, I'm also going to tell a story from a convention, but I'm going to tell my story with great humility because, guys, I'm new to the industry. I am still very much a rookie sitting at your feet. So hear my story and then just pat the top of my head and say, "You're so cute, you'll grow up soon." A lot of times when I go to expos, I don't have a lot of real conversations about parking. And with one exception, one time a gentleman approached me and asked about TPN consulting and asked what we did. And I gave him our answer. And then he said to me, "I know my facility very well. And there's this one aspect of my operation that I don't understand. Could we talk about vend exceptions?" That's what he had a question about. Like, that was the challenge of his operation. And he came to the convention hoping to find a solution to his challenge. So Krista, your question was, how could we go to conventions and actually better the industry, which is one of our core values? And I'm thinking about my story, and I think maybe there's some wisdom there. If we're going to go to a parking convention, let's know our facility well enough to be able to articulate the challenge and be humble and interested in the vendors and say, hey, like go to every table and say, hey, I'm having trouble with opening the gate appropriately. How can you help? Or what is the best practice? So know your facility, know its challenges, and then go to the convention looking for solutions.
And I think that plays into this idea of simplicity. Like, parking is a simple act. You drive in, you park, you pay for that session, maybe before or after, but then you drive out, right? So it's a very simple process. And like Leigh said at the very beginning, we have complicated it so much. And like Graham touched on, we got to get back to that simple customer experience or customer journey. So if he is having trouble with VIN exceptions, maybe someone else is too. So who out there even knows what a VIN exception is? Do our parks vendors, hardware, softwares, do they know what they are? Do they care how it impacts the facility and the bottom line, the expenses and the revenue that everybody wants to talk about?
And the customer experience.
Yeah, because those VIN exceptions are the details that are impacting the big picture. And so having that question is really wise. I'm impressed that someone came with that question, because that is a number we look at every month, the VIN exceptions. Why they happened, it's lost revenue in most cases. So how can we fix it? What's the problem that the customers are experiencing that keeps recurring that we can solve? And all those questions. So looking at the details, understanding how an operation works, and the VIN exceptions at his location are not the same as the VIN exceptions that we would see at a location in Dallas, Texas. Who knows, right? So I think understanding those concepts and understanding that it's all in the details, going back to the big picture ideas and what data is important and knowing how to address the data, we can't talk about it enough, pretty much.
Yeah. So find us. We're at conventions and we can help.
We can talk about VIN exceptions all day long.
Let me see. Does that tell me that we need to wear the shirt that has the parking network and stuff all on it here?
I'm going to start wearing a shirt that says, ask me about VIN exceptions, and people will be like, what is a VIN exception?
Not a bad plan. Not a bad plan.
All right. Well, we have had a great conversation following up on Graham's episode. He was a delight to talk to. He is a resource, and he's at a lot of conventions. So if you have the opportunity to meet him, take advantage of the conversations you have with him. You will walk away with some nuggets of wisdom. So if you have any questions, reach out to us and we are happy to help. But thank you for joining us on this episode of the Our Parking Industry Podcast, and we will see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
To quote one of the greatest business minds of our time, Charles Munger, he said, "The best thing a human can do is help another human being know more." Here on Our Parking Industry Podcast, we want to provide knowledge and resources. If you heard something that sparked your curiosity in today's episode, please reach out on our socials at TPN Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. See you next time on Our Parking Industry.